ayy. Window down, yelling out money, anything, ayy. Ooh, got the foot on the gas, pedal to the metal when I'm getting to the bag, ayy. Got the foot on the gas, pedal to the metal when the lane moving fast, ayy, ayy. Let them all cross, if they hate, then let them hate and make a bigger boss, ayy.
Hey guys, before we jump into the episode, I wanted to let you know it is brought to you by the NMFTA. Let me ask you a question. Do you ship LTL freight? Then listen up, because the NMFC changes went live on July 19th, and they're the biggest updates in the history of freight classification. Now more than ever, accuracy matters. That's why carriers, shippers, and brokers alike are turning to Class IT Plus, the NMFTA's new digital platform for real-time NMFC data. Stop guessing, start classifying smarter, and quote freight with confidence. It's time to get your ship together because the NMFC changes are already here. Learn more at nmfcchanges.com and get started with Class IT Plus at classitplus.com. Just do me a favor and let them know that the Freight Coach sent you. This episode is brought to you by SPI Logistics, the premier freight agent logistics firm in North America. For over 40 years, SPI has been diligently building the most successful freight agent network to provide first-class relationships for our shippers, receivers, and carrier partners. We are more than another transportation network. We are a dedicated team of professionals united by one singular purpose, and that is to expedite our agents' success. All of our agents are set up for success on day one, as they are provided with a full suite of support staff that is ready to assist them with everything from after-hours emergencies to financial and administrative needs on a no-fee basis. This way, you can focus on continuing to grow your business. There is no financial risk to start, and you have the ability to earn up to 75% in commissions. If you are looking to take control of your financial future and build your business with the backing of one of the most successful logistics firms in North America, visit www.spi3pl.com to learn more. Do me a favor and let them know that the Freight Coach sent you.
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? We are back. We are live. It is the Freight Coach Podcast, the top podcast in transportation, coming to you guys every single weekday, 8:30 a.m. Pacific, 10:30 Central, to break down some industry headlines. But most importantly, you guys, provide some actual insight into what you can do with all of this information. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome. This is the real side of freight, ladies and gentlemen. And I say that before every single show. And what I mean by that is I only speak with transportation professionals, because at the end of the day, I want to talk to the right individuals who have done what you're looking to do or who are currently doing what you're trying to achieve. So you can take that information, apply it, utilize it, and see a meaningful difference in your business and your life. Happy Tuesday, everybody. I got a very special guest for you guys, and we're going to dive right in. Today, you guys, we're talking about cybercrime, trucking. You know, there's a lot of stuff out there in regards to freight theft, identity theft, double brokering, probably quadruple brokering, and a bunch of stuff out there. But like, what are we doing to prepare ourselves to not let it get to that point? Cybercrime is rising. The individual who's on my show today, their organization has been spearheading it now for at least 5 years. And we're going to break down some strategies and tactics for you guys to apply today. So I have Mr. Artie Crawford on the show with the NMFTA. So Artie, thank you so much for taking the time to join me.
Chris, I appreciate you allowing me to be on the show and just talk about these things that we're passionate about.
No, I mean, passionate is an understatement when it comes down to it. It's like, it's funny every time I see an article pop up about cybersecurity inside of transportation. I'm like, oh, it's great that that's, you know, a thing, but like the NMFTA has been talking about that stuff for years. You guys are truly spearheaded. You've spearheaded this topic. You guys have a ton of resources that are in there and invested into that to make the industry a better place, to really thwart this for, you know, organizations of all sizes. And I think like that's kind of the big thing, Artie, that a lot of people think is they're like, I'm a small company. It's not going to happen to me. They're like, nobody's looking to actively, you know, fish my company.
Well, I think that you're spot on with that we've heard that story 1,000 times over. And it's one of the biggest myths that we try to dispel, right? Last year, we were kind of in this mode of dispelling that myth. And look, just because you're small, just because you're this, just because you use this software or whatever it is, whatever that optimism that you have and the reason why you won't be breached is probably actually the reason you will be breached.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think that's it, right? It's like most people, again, they like, because I think like the scariest thing for me is how evolved a lot of these cyber criminals have gotten. It's not your typical easy to spot way of kind of going about it. And they're hitting multiple different angles now. I think like one of the most underspoken about topics is the shipper phishing. And I say it because there's a lot of people who have infiltrated shippers systems that are now trying to send out fake load information to get your banking information and everything. And they're trying to act like, hey, I have this shipment. I see you're your logistics company. And I think like that's the biggest red flag of them all. Cause it's like, I like to, fancy myself as a cold calling connoisseur, somebody who does it every single day, but like, I'm not that good to where they're just like reaching out to me. Hey man, I want to give you all of my business.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of that, as well as, as business email compromise has just climbed immensely because, as this industry runs on trust, right? And that trust is irrevocable, right? Once it's broken, because of the fact that it's like, oh my gosh, what did I just do? Right? When it's an ask for a banking change, or let me take this load for you. When you got somebody really energetically trying to engage you, I like to call it your spidey senses start tingling, right? Yeah. And I think that that's part of this industry that we don't put enough characterization around that says, my spidey senses are tingling. Maybe I should do a little more due diligence, or I should follow up a little better.
So you guys and this is one, I'm going to put the link out there for you guys to go in there and download this, because you guys put together a report for people here recently. And, again, it's just packed with a ton of information and value for people to go out there and talk about that. Well, what was the big driving force? Is this something that you guys do on an annual basis to kind of like look back on the last 12 months? And it's kind of like a cybercrime, review in the year in talking about some of those topics that have came to light?
Yeah. So it probably started 3 or 4 years ago, like you said, when we started getting into, the cybersecurity aspect in the trucking industry. We started putting out these annual trends reports, and these annual trends reports started to become very positive influence for the organization and the sector itself, right? And what we've seen evolve through that, right? When we started putting these out, it was kind of an amalgamation of Cloudflare, of Gartner, of which holistically makes sense, but it didn't really have a lot of purpose for the transportation industry itself. Mm-hmm. This year has been a first for us, as we've taken everything that's in the report this year directly relates to transportation and how it relates to the organization and how the transportation industry, the good, the bad, and the ugly, so to say, right, on what they need to do to, what they're doing right, some things that they can do better, and then move the industry forward. And we're really optimistic this year with the way that the report came out. It really, as an industry, we've stepped up our game, right? We've rolled up our sleeves, so to say, and we started digging into some of these things that have made us vulnerable. You mentioned that, oh, I'm too small, or, oh, I use AS400, or, oh, I do this, right? So I'm not a target. But what we've seen over the last year in this trends report is those myths are being dispelled. Some of the things that we talk about, see something, say something, and we're sharing amongst the industry now, and the industry is like better, stronger, faster for it.
Mm-hmm. So it's like, what are some of those evolutions that cyber threats, look over the last 3 years, right? 2024 through, we're at 2026 now. What are some of those, like, how does that evolution look like? And what is unique about the times that we are in and, about to embark upon?
I think the uniqueness that you speak of is the flat out use of AI. And, and it's almost like we cannot get into any discussion in the transportation industry without talking about AI, right? But that evolution has taken place not only on the good side, right? Routing's better, finding loads is better, making sure that, that our gas mileage is correct, or that we're performing maintenance in a predictive way and not a preventative way, right? That part has been really good, but what we haven't realized, or what we're starting to realize, is the bad guys are using it for evil as well, right? Now, and when you talk about the evolution, if you just think back 3 years ago, a crafted email, you could almost spot it out because it wasn't written in English as a first language, right? It was written as English as a second language. So it was much easier to spot. And these organized crime units have gotten way more sophisticated in their use of AI, the way that they're targeting, the way that they're using the trucking industry as a foundation for, ultimately orchestrating the theft.
So, when you're talking about automation, really, it's just like outpacing the humans' ability to respond to it. What does that look like in real operations, do you think? When you're talking about like the fraud, for example, and how now it used to go from like a different, it was very, very apparent. What does that evolution look like?
Yeah. So we're seeing the human aspect being overtaken by the AI aspect of it, right?
Yeah.
So it really comes back down to training our people that are in the right positions, in the right jobs, and getting into that. Hey, my spidey senses are tingling. I probably should say something to somebody else, or have this double checked. And it's changing our operational processes as well, right? We're starting, instead of allowing somebody just to change banking information on the fly, we're starting to say and put things in place that say, okay, banking information doesn't get changed without a phone call, or banking information doesn't get changed without talking to management, So it's slowing down the process, but it's also validating the process. And that verification can only be done by humans, right? It's really hard to validate, that a broker or a shipper, they are exactly who they say they are without a phone call.
So, how is this, like when it comes down to it, it kind of sounds like it's almost, like they're socially engineering people here, right? Like through AI to kind of get them. Do you think because again, I think do you think people are going in for the kill shot right away, or are they taking that slow and steady approach to kind of build up trust, build up interactions, and then they strike?
Oh, Chris, you're like laying them out there easy for me to answer at this point, right? So we're seeing a lot of organizations, let's just say brokers, and I think that you would be a prime example of this, right? And I don't know your operational processes, but let's just say that before a carrier gets a high value load, they have to run 5 or 6 loads for you, right? Of medium value or of increasing value along the way, that if it gets ripped off or stolen or misdirected in flight, that, okay, it wasn't that big a deal. And I say that because all missing loads are a big deal.
Yeah.
But it wasn't $1 million load, right? It wasn't Shaq's car or something of that nature, right? And they're learning what your internal processes are. The organized crime units that are out there are learning what those internal processes are, and they're being a good carrier or a good shipper right up until the point where they've crossed the threshold and you trust them with a load that is of much higher value. And that's the load that they can easily pilfer, they can easily redirect, because they were trusted now. So you're right. They're starting to learn the process. They're slow rolling it, and they're waiting for that right opportunity to take what they can.
How are you guys raising awareness, really? Because it seems like at this point, a lot of the attackers are just like using legitimate tools, right? Like they're out there, they're utilizing TMSs, APIs, email. They're using, like they look like legitimate businesses. And then especially if you go out on social media, you can see like people are selling their entire company, including like logins on Facebook groups, right? So it's like that's seemingly like a pathway in there. How can a company like spot some of this stuff? Like, is there any tips that you can give out for that?
It's getting harder and harder. And the same due diligence that you do when you're vetting a carrier or vetting a shipper, right, through all of the normal means, the 411s, the highways, the truck stops. And I don't want to leave anybody out of that. There's probably a dozen more of those. But I think that there are red flags out there, right? If you're, for instance, if you're hauling a flatbed load, right, and you ask them, hey, do you have the right equipment and what do you set your temperatures at? And they're like, oh yeah, we've got our temperature set here and here. That's going to take the human element to spot that might not be right. When you go back to vetting a carrier that typically runs in the Southeast,
Mm-hmm.
and they're like, no, we have equipment out in the Northwest. Well, really, you do? It looks like all of your loads and everything are basically Southeast based. So it's going to be that, and I love to talk about this because of the fact that it's one of those things. I talk about the crazy uncle, right? That's your dispatcher, or the crazy uncle that's out on the dock that cross docks everything. He knows exactly where everything goes and how it goes there and what it's supposed to do and who's bringing what, when, and where, right? The downside of that is if the crazy uncle gets hit coming to work that day, we're kind of in a bad situation. But that's also the same guy that can help spot that this might not be valid, and this might be because of that tribal knowledge of the industry. And that's something that can't be replaced, is that tribal knowledge of the industry. And that's the people that when their spidey senses start to tingle, man, we got to listen to it and start to dig a little deeper.
No, and that's it, right? Because I look at it, and you guys talked about this in the report, that it's beyond just carriers, right? It is brokers, SaaS providers, shippers, like pretty much any piece of technology that is integrated into your technology. You need to be talking to them about their cyber plan, like their cybersecurity processes, all of that stuff in there, because like that was one of my biggest takeaways from the event in Austin this year. And again, you guys, the NMFTA puts on an annual cybersecurity conference, and I literally just walk away kind of like with my jaw on the floor. And this year was that like hearing somebody speaking about like the in-depth about how they only need access to one system. And if there's any API connectivity at all throughout that ecosystem, they can get access to everything. And it's wild to think about that, right? Because again, it's like you're out there, you're building your business, right? Most business owners out here, whether they're trucking companies, freight brokers, they're like, we got to get revenue. We got to get, oh, great. Now there's this piece of technology that's going to help us win more business out there. The last thing on most companies' mind, what does your cyber infrastructure look like? How are you going to protect any like cyber theft from happening inside of my company?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And we're seeing an increased use of legitimate tools, API connections. And one of the bigger ones we're seeing a lot of use of are RMM tools, right? Remote management tools.
Yeah, remote man. Okay.
So you don't have everybody on site anymore, right? Thank you, COVID. Maybe good, bad, or ugly, right? But we don't have everybody on site anymore, and we've allowed people to have a work-life balance. So we have remote tools that allow us to get in and adjust our infrastructure, check loads, work from home, whatever that is. But those same RMM tools are being exploited, right?
Mm-hmm.
For nefarious purposes.
Mm-hmm.
And those tools are the ones that you're kind of talking about, right? The connections of APIs, these remote management tools, right? Being able to, to log in from elsewhere without multi-factor authentication, sharing of accounts. We're still seeing a lot of that take place, that 4 or 5 people from accounting all have, access, through one login that's not multi-factor authentication. So even though we see increases, we're still seeing some of the, the good cyber hygiene practices are not being put in place.
So like, do you have any examples of any third-party compromises that you can kind of talk about here in regards specifically to the transportation industry?
So we saw one last year, and I'm not going to call them out.
Yeah.
But the group that did it was CLOP, right? And CLOP is a well-known ransomware cyber criminal organization, right? But they exploited a TMS system that several big brokers use, right? So we tried to help those big brokers and carriers for that matter. So we went back to each one of those that we found and said, okay, look, you use this particular TMS system, and it has a lot of data contained in it. And CLOP has just put this out on our website that said that we took all this data, and we kind of went through systematically and tried to help each of these organizations, realize that they were breached. And it's a very interesting phone call. If I call you, Chris, because of your awareness, you're going to be like, oh, okay, thanks for giving me a call. But in other cases, they're like, well, is this a bad guy calling me to say that I've been just breached? So, that's kind of a double-edged sword when it comes to that. It's unfortunate, but we try to help as much as we can. And there are definite examples of it out there. And CLOP was just one of the groups that breached last year.
So, because to me, it's like, we talk about multi-factor authentication and stuff like that comes along with this. But like when it comes from a third party like that, and then how could you stop somebody who gets a phishing phone call from one of this said third party providers that says, hey, I'm a representative with this company, I need access to your stuff? What can a company do in that situation, Artie? Is it hang up the phone, go to your boss, do something besides, oh yeah, here's my email, send me a link to click on?
Yeah, well, let's hope that they're not doing that part, right? Because that's the really first and quick and dangerous way to allow somebody nefarious to be in your network. But if you just step back just a second and you ask yourself, is this a legitimate request, right? Should I allow somebody else to take a look at this, right? What are the things that I can do to protect my organization, along the way before I click on this link? And a shameless plug here, right, is NMFTA put out what we call a vendor checklist, right?
Yeah.
And there's kind of a set of questions down there that you should probably be familiar with when you're working with third-party vendors, right? Hey, do you take cybersecurity seriously? Do you have multi-factor authentication enabled? And it goes down the list of some of the questions that you should probably be able to ask them. And if they can't return the right answer, then that load or that brokerage or that third party might not be the best third party to work with.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree with that. And I think that's the big thing that a lot of, because again, it's like you're sold on AI, you're sold on automation, you're sold on a lot of these softwares already to, again, they have a lot of great case studies to make your life a lot easier from your operational standpoint. But it's like, you got to take a step back and think all right, at what cost though? Is there an actual cyber policy in place? What does their response look like? Do they even have a plan? And that's why it's again, I'm glad you brought up that checklist though, because again, most organizations, that's literally the last thing on most companies' mind, Artie, is this third party vendor that I'm about to purchase a subscription through cyber secure? That's the last thing on their mind more times than not. I would probably argue 99% of the time, they're not even thinking about that, let alone that could be a system that's already compromised or at a higher risk of becoming compromised than your own internal operation.
You're 100% right, Chris. And that's what we got to, when I talk about all the time, and they talk about the Artie bingo card all the time. And it's kind of funny because it's things that I repeatedly say. Cyber's a team sport. And it's not only a team sport from one organization to another organization, but it's a team sport inside of an organization as well. Whether you have one employee, two employees, whether you have 150 employees, right? It's a team sport for the organization, and it's part of everybody's job description, right? You might be just dispatch, or you might be just accounting. The downside is that you're an integral part of the process of ensuring that cybersecurity is maintained and of good standing inside your organization.
So what can small carriers and brokers do that have limited resources of any IT or tech or cyber budget at all? What can they do? How can they prioritize some of those investments?
If I had to put a couple things in, right, low hanging fruit, so to say, I would say training, and then training again, right? How to recognize this, what to look for. But I would also make sure that multi-factor authentication is 100% in place. And then going back and changing any default passwords, because those are known. Those are known throughout the industry, right? Whether it's a router, whether it's a switch, whether it's, the first instantiation of putting Windows 365 in place. All of those default passwords are known by pretty much the entire criminal organization out there. And I think just changing those just to start with is a really good first step. And they're free. And there's so much cybersecurity training out there that's free. Yes, it costs you a couple hours, in order to go through some of these, vignettes, but there's some good stuff out there. And then I would, again, another shameless plug, come out to the NMFTA website, right?
Yeah.
And just look at the things that we put out there, because we break it down in such a fashion that says, okay, these are the 5 main cybersecurity things that you need to do to prevent freight fraud, or not prevent it, but to mitigate some of it. Here's another 5 ways that if you look at these type of things, that you can start to mitigate more freight fraud, or cyber enabled freight fraud is what I should be saying. So I think collectively there's a group of free resources out there, and awareness is probably the key. And then trusting your gut. Trusting your gut. If it just doesn't look right, or the value is too good to be true, we talked about growing up that nothing is free.
Yeah.
And that's a true statement, right? If it just doesn't look right, or it's too good to be true, it's probably not.
What are some things people need to be on the lookout for, Artie? I think it's very well publicized about current trends that are going on and that have been going on in the industry. Are you guys seeing anything evolving that are becoming a point of concern for operators inside of the transportation industry?
We're seeing a lot. Okay, so 2 things that I think are paramount in the industry right now is concentration. And what I mean by concentration is a number of carriers gravitating towards one platform, right? And that's great that a number of carriers are gravitating towards the same platform, but that concentration also is a liability as well, because if that platform is compromised, then we have a problem, right? That's there. The second thing that I think that we're seeing, and this is across, it's not just transportation, right? It's across the entire cybersecurity industry, is the use of one-day exploits. And what I mean by that, it used to be that everybody was scared of the 0 day, right? Oh my gosh, we're going to be, Chicken Little, the sky is falling. There's no more rainbows and unicorns because of a 0 day. That's a true statement. But what we're seeing more often than not now is the exploit of a 1 day, which is basically an exploit that's not been patched. Everybody knows it exists, and that has not been patched yet because the vendor doesn't have a patch for it, or you elected as an organization not to apply that patch as quick as you should have. So we're seeing a lot of that take place, and those are turning into bigger events than they should be because the patch is probably already out there.
That's my big concern with a lot of where things are, in regards to technology and, specifically inside of AI, where I think like the further and further the human is removed from the transaction, the higher the likelihood that you're going to be compromised. I could be wrong. I truly could, but like I look at it is when it comes to like automatic booking of loads, and like you have an AI dispatcher calling, trucking companies, or like you're automating the load booking process where there's no stopgap. I don't know. I see like that is the easiest path. That's the low hanging fruit that I think a lot of people are overlooking as a potential compromise point, at least from a freight broker's perspective.
I think that you're spot on with that, right? With AI outpacing the human involvement, right? we still got to have some type of human involvement in the loop. Unfortunately, it does slow things down. But on the good side of AI, the defense mechanisms, right, being able to spot anomalies, using AI to help that is really starting to step up, right? So it's allowing the human to interact with AI on a more positive sequence in the defense aspects of using AI. So whereas you make a very valid point that automating a load is a low-hanging fruit, you're 100% spot on. But AI on the other side is helping the defenders kind of step up their game a little bit and find, I like to call it, finding a particular penny in a bag of shiny pennies, right? You're looking for that 1973, minted at the Denver Mint, right? Well, you've got 2 bags of shiny pennies that are just sitting there. You're like, how am I going to find this one penny that's in there? And AI is doing a really good job of helping find that shiny penny in a bag of shiny pennies.
Yeah, I look at it with where we are right now, it's definitely one of those. It's not a matter of if, it's when. And again, like I think like my biggest takeaway, and again, this is coming from a non-tech person, you guys, the biggest takeaway that I've had from these events and the multiple interviews I've done on cyber is having a plan is going to protect you. Like having a plan, it might not be the best plan, but that's a start. And then having an actual process that your people can follow, because again, most people don't think that they're going to get hit, but like that's when you're going to get hit is if you think you're too small or whatever. And again, it's like go as far as practicing this stuff, right? Like if you do get one of those random calls on there, have a company policy, a 2-person like touch point, right? Do something besides act in that moment. Take a step back, assess the situation, because I feel like that is going to set you up to minimize. I'm not going to say avoid. I will say minimize the potential exposure is having a plan and then also taking a step back in the moment, walk away, bring somebody else in like, hey, I just got this phone call or I just got this email. Something doesn't seem right. I think we all who have been doing freight for a while understand the high unlikeliness that a shipper is going to reach out to you and want to give you their freight when you have no established contact with them. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it is highly unlikely that that's going to happen.
I think that you're bringing up the valid points of, and you're making my point for me on the spidey senses, right?
Yeah.
These are things that you have tribal knowledge in the industry that says a shipper's not reaching out to me that I don't have something that sounds a little fishy, right? Mm-hmm. And those are things that you need to ask about and ask another set of questions, and when you're doing this, and you bring up something that we talk about continually, right, is have a plan, have a backup to the plan, right? It doesn't have to be a great plan because you're going to lessons learn it when you have your cyber incident, and you're going to be able to refine that plan. Maybe you'll have an opportunity to exercise that plan and figure out where the gaps are. But as you start to exercise the plan and realize there's some gaps, you refine it. And whether these are operational processes that need to be refined or cybersecurity/IT processes that need to be refined, having a plan is absolutely the best first start.
No, absolutely. Artie, thank you so much for your time today. How does anybody reach out to you guys? We're going to put the link, you guys. Again, this is a free report out there. We're going to put a link in the show notes for you guys all to go and access all of this information. You guys, the NMFTA puts out a ton of free. Again, free is always a great price. Free resources to help protect your organization. But how do people reach out to you directly?
Yeah, so you can reach out to us at nmfta.org and just click the cybersecurity dropdown. You'll see all of the resources we have out there. We have, from small to medium-sized fleet guidance to vendor checklists. And then one of the, and this report this year is probably one of the best ones we've put out. It really takes a deep dive into all of the things that we kind of hit on and touched on in this podcast. And then it kind of goes into, it even grabs and talks about legislation that's coming down the pipe and privacy issues that are happening. So go out and take a look. It's just a great report this year.
No, I couldn't agree more. Artie, thank you so much. That's going to be it for today, ladies and gentlemen. As always, if you got value in what you heard, which I know you did, Artie just laid out a masterclass for you guys. And then again, there's a free report that you guys can all check out. Implement this stuff into your organization, you guys. As always, if you got value, subscribe to the show, Rank it on iTunes and Spotify if you're feeling ambitious, which you should be. I appreciate you guys. I love you guys, and we'll be talking to you soon.